Good morning. Vanessa here from Apple Patch. Okay, we are up to an exciting week. It is background week, where you actually start using your background fabric on some of your blocks. Now, just before we go any further, I don't know if I've shown these, so these are my blocks from last week. This is my Paul and Nadelstrom version. And here's my one with my stripe down through. And then I've got my Tilda versions. And here's my other one. Oh. Now the bunny in the middle is up the right way. So they're my last couple of blocks. Okay, background fabric. So for my Tilda version, I'm using cream, or sort of like an off-white cream. For my Paul and Nadelstrom version, I'm using black. I've had a lot of people decide to use black. I think that's just because colours tend to pop off of black so well. So it'll be interesting to see how they all turn out. Let me know what colour you're using. Okay, so background fabric. In your instructions for this week, it's going to tell you to cut a strip of fabric from your background fabric. Woohoo! And from that strip of fabric, you're going to cut a square. And I'm going to give you the option of two measurements. One is ever so slightly oversized, which is probably what I recommend. Because you can always trim off, you can't add on. So my square here is the slightly oversized version. Now we're going to cut this square into two very large triangles. And this needs to be accurate. You can't get away with this not being accurate. So first of all, I have double checked that this is in fact square. Now on your mats at home, I would be very surprised if your mats do not have a 45-degree line on them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the edge of my square with that 45-degree line. And I'm going to double check that this corner down here now and that corner up there are on one of the vertical lines. So this is a way of double checking that my square is actually square. And I can also see the 2 points that are either side are probably about a 1/16 of an inch down from the horizontal line. So now I can use my ruler, line it up with that vertical line and make my cut. If for some reason your board does not have a 45-degree line on it, so this method works when you've only got a narrow ruler, because you're using the board to make sure it's in position for the vertical cut. If you have a large square ruler, and I use this one, probably, I reckon a good 30% of the time I use this big ruler. These big rulers all have a 45-degree line on them. I can place this anywhere on my mat. Line the 45-degree line up with the edge of the fabric, making sure it is spot on, making sure it comes right to this tip, and then it should be right to the tip up there. So I'm cutting diagonally from corner to corner. So I've got two triangles. Now, one of these triangles you're going to tuck away for next week. And this is the one we're going to be working with. So again, when you get your pattern, you're going to be selecting 3 fabrics for the rest of the block. And in my stash from where I've cut other bits and bobs out of my tilga, I happen to have a triangle, a half square triangle. I'm going to use that. And in the instructions, I'm going to tell you to cut a strip out of 2 other fabrics, and just getting a cutter. I have given these a press, but there's lots of fluffy ends on them. So I'm just going to give this a bit of a trim so the edges are nice and neat. Again, the instruction will say what measurement that needs to be. And I'm not going to worry about squaring up the ends. And then my second strip. Got a bit of selvage on the end there. I'm just going to roughly cut off so I don't accidentally use it. And that edge is nice and straight. And now I'm just going to cut it to the width in the pattern. There we go. So what I've got now is my triangle. I have got a long strip. I've got a slightly shorter strip, and I have got a triangle. And in the pattern again, I give you the dimension for the minimum size for that triangle. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to find the center of each of these strips. I tend to use a little fingernail score. I'm going to find the center of my triangle. I'm going to put those right sides together, match up that center point, and I'm going to go over and sew a 1/4 inch seam. And then I'm going to open that out, find the center point of the next 2 strips, sew them together, and then find the center point of my last triangle and sew that onto there. So I'm just going to pause the camera while I go and do that. And through the magic of technology, here is my sewn background fabric with my 3 different colours. Now on mine, because I'm using a light coloured background, I have pressed away from the light colour. If you've got a dark colour, it really doesn't matter. Now, if you happen to have a large square ruler, it makes it fairly easy, oops, get in the shot, yes sir, fairly easy to cut this to size. I can put the 45-degree line on my ruler on that middle seam, and I can see that I'm going to be trimming off a hair's breadth on my cream fabric, and these little tails will get trimmed off as well. So this is the chance to absolutely make sure that your strips do go past the size of your block. So the main thing is to make sure that 45-degree line is on that seam, because that means your corners will go right through those seams, so you won't lose your corners when you sew it together or your points. So that is one option if you've got a large ruler. If you don't have a large ruler, most people have at least, usually 2 rulers. So it means doing a little bit of maths. So I'm going to, one of my rulers is 6 inches and the other one is 6.5. Let's put this one around. So I'm going to get the edge of, now I'm just going to move the camera a little bit because I've managed to chop that off. There we go. So I've got the edge here. So it's just catching my purple fabric. And I can see that I've got a little bit of cream all the way around. So I'm obviously going, because I've got 6.5, 7, 8, 9, I can see I've got a little bit of fabric all the way around. And I'm making sure that those lines are parallel to the edge of my fabric. Now you can also do a double check because, again, your ruler will have a 45-degree line. I can slide that one up and actually make sure that 45-degree line is on my seam. And then slide it back down to do the cut. Now, it means obviously rotating this around. I flipped it around 180 degrees. And now I'm lining up one of the inch lines on my ruler with that edge I've just cut. Nope, and I'm going to slide it over so it's on the right measurement. Again, now I can see a little bit of cream poking out there. I'm making sure those rulers are really buttered up together. And now I've got these two sides to cut. Again, I'm making sure that because this ruler is 6.5, this little ruler, I'm making sure I've got 3 inches on that ruler there. Make sure they're really buttered up together. And I can see where I'm cutting through this corner, it is just going to where that seam is. And then flip it around and make my last trim. Now, if you feel uncomfortable doing this, you don't have to do this trim right now. You can leave this fabric, or leave these blocks until you're ready to put it together before you trim them. And that's not necessarily a bad thing to do because if you overhandle blocks, you do get the little fluffies around the outside anyway. So you don't have to trim them today if you don't want to, or when you make the block. Okay, so there is my block trimmed up to the correct size, and I like that one. It's a nice simple block, but I like it. Okay, I'm going to do a proper pause on the camera this time and show you block number 2. Okay, here is the next block. It's really similar to Spinger, but I've just changed the center. I'm just going to put the camera down. There we go, little bump. Okay, so this is the block here. So the center is what we call a square and a square. Now you can either make that by cutting individual pieces, or you can use the stitch and flip method. So we did the stitch and flip method for this block here. So that's what we did with these corners. We cut squares. So this little section in the center, I have cut my center square, and then I have cut little squares. I'm going to draw a line from point to point. Place that square in the corner and sew along my line. Or you can do a crease if you don't want to draw the line. And then this excess here gets cut away and this gets flipped open to form our little corners. Now, I usually do these, so I do the two opposite corners first and trim them, and then I do the other two corners. So that's my recommended method for making the square and a square unit. Or, as I say, you can actually follow the pattern directions on the cutting sheet and cut individual pieces. But I think stitch and flip makes it much easier. For my layout here, I've also cut my pieces as individual pieces so you can see the layout, but you can also leave them as the solid square. Just move these aside. As the solid square, put right sides to right side, draw a line down the center and then stitch 1/4 inch either side and then cut them apart. Either method is fine for these. I have done mine slightly oversized, so I will trim them back each unit after sewing them together. But the little square and a square, these pieces are cut at the exact size because you can't trim these ones back. So what we're looking for is, as you sew these and stick and flip them open, just get this on here. Once the two pieces are on, the distance from that point there to the edge of your unit should be 1/4 inch. That's what we're looking for. So that as you sew them together, you are sewing just right through that point there. Okay, I'm going to sew this unit up and show you how it looks. I'm going to pause the video again. Okay, my last little bit of the video for this block. I have got my 3 rows sewn together. And here's my little square in the center. Now, to show you when you're sewing these 2 rows together, I have pressed my square and a square with the seams open, which means when I just get these lined up, when I sew my row together, if I sew it with the square and a square unit facing up, I can aim right for that point there to make sure I'm stitching right next to the point. So I'm just going to show you these ones I've sewn together in the row. If I open that out, you can see my stitching, oops, hopefully you can see my stitching goes right through the point there. Now I'm pressing my tilde main seams to the side, which means this block is made out of the A fabric, so I'm pressing my main seams the same way as I pressed my very first block, so that they'll interlock together when I sew them together. So I think this is going to be quite a pretty little block. I like this one. Like I say, it's exactly the same, almost exactly the same as Spinger, just with a different center. And you'll notice if you're pressing your seams to the side, it will actually, your seams where you do your half square triangles will actually be going in the opposite direction to the Spinger seams. Okay, right, Spinger. Oh, Spinger. That one there. Okay, so hope you like making these blocks. This one is out of Yippee fabrics, just in case you're wondering. And I'm going to hopefully join these couple of videos together and get it all uploaded. Okay, bye.